Explorers, Joe
Yes.
Dante, 1985. Fresh on the heels of Gremlins, fresh on the heels of Back to the Future, which he did not make, but Back to the Future came out 3 weeks before this movie and may account for why this thing disappeared as a considerable flop. To be resurrected in the hearts, minds, and imaginations of generations to follow, and appreciated by Shout Factory. This is not a paid promotion, but they've got a new Blu-ray that's out as of this week, which is packed full of really cool things, some of which I think we'll talk about tonight.
Yeah.
But I want to start off by asking you, what is your history with Explorers?
I don't have much history with Explorers. Okay. And I think it's because of the plethora of movies that came out in 85 when I was 13. So, Rocky IV, Rambo 2, Back to the Future, Cocoon, The Goonies, Spies Like Us, Mad Max 3, Commando, Teen Wolf, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. All those really just, got my attention, and Poor Explorers just kind of, I think I remember seeing that, and it definitely felt kind of Bergian. And I was like, well, okay. And it was just, I was getting to the point where, I was closely approaching high school, and it was like, this seems, maybe I'm outgrowing this, And so I remember seeing clips of it, and I was a huge River Phoenix fan. So I'm like, why haven't I watched this? So that's one of the reasons why I did a cold purchase with Shout Factory's new Blu-ray. And I'm really happy I did, and I'm kind of happy that for the first time at age 49, I saw this the whole way through, because there's a certain nostalgia that this conjures. And it really is just a warm and charming, movie that conjures nostalgia for a movie that I didn't watch back when I should have.
But certainly for an era, I mean, this, you look at this thing and there is no doubt as to when it came out. It's that pure, sci-fi Americana, sci-fi movie from 1985. It's unmistakable.
Right.
There was talk of doing a remake of this a few years ago, and I hope that never happens. But
no.
Yeah, it's strange. I would have thought that this would have been kind of your jam.
Oh, I mean, it is my jam. It is now.
Back, yeah.
No, I understand. I don't know why. I think it was, just one of those things that, skipped. I was so busy with all these other movies in 85. It's just like 85 and 82 is just nuts with movies. But and especially this being the debut of Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix, in a feature film, just watching that incredible, I think it's an hour long, kind of a documentary feature as one of the special features of the making of the movie. Thankfully, Ethan Hawke shows up and speaks a little bit, and so does Joe Dante. But it's crazy to think that how they cast him was just nuts. It was just like, it was, I think he was doing a reading. His friend brought him along and say, hey, why don't you read for this? And it's true. I mean, he has this kind of I could see why he was cast, because he just has this kind of this kind of gee golly, awestruck, looking up at the stars kind of, dreaminess that is with the wrong kid actor, it could be really cloying or pretentious, unintentionally, because you can't blame kids too much. But this kid just, had this kind of natural authenticity, and he was just good at being a kid.
Yeah, and it's weird to think of Ethan Hawke now. I mean, that was the first thing for me, is it's startling because I've seen a lot of Ethan Hawke movies in the last 10 years or so.
Sure.
I finally caught up with the Before trilogy.
Yeah.
But I think it was the Before trilogy and probably Reality Bites that kind of solidified him as the kind of the brooding like 90s kind of hipster guy.
Right.
And to see him as this wide-eyed kid that the brooding 90s hipster guy would have been like, oh, just get out of here, kid. It's it's strange, but it's also cool because he's got this infectious kid enthusiasm that's so recognizable. You have that purity of Before You Grow Up. It's almost like a progression of Goonies and then this movie and then Stand By Me, because I believe those were 84, 85, and 86. Going from the kids who are a little bit younger than the kids in this movie, in the Goonies, going on this adventure. They were probably like 10, 11 years old.
Right.
And then you've got these kids who are probably about 13, maybe 12 or 13. And then Gordy and all of his friends in Stand By Me, they're right around the same age, but they're in those kind of transition years where they're just about to turn the next age. And you can see the world of the adult creeping into all three of those movies and how these different kinds of kids handle each of them. But I got to say, River Phoenix in this is even more startling because I don't think I've ever seen him play anything like this, except for maybe the kind of comedic role he had in Sneakers. maybe. Yeah. Because I think of him as more of a straight, like a serious kind of
cool kid.
Actor. Yeah. Well, not even cool, just like troubled, the disturbed kid.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this definitely was a departure. And I think even like in that kind of making of documentary, he originally was auditioning for the Darren role played by Jason Presson. And I think initially he was a little disappointed that, he didn't get that, but then he was given the kind of geeky science nerd. But I love what he did with it.
I did too. And I wonder if some of that annoyance came out in his performance because, I know Wolfgang and Darren aren't supposed to really get along, but he really sells those kind of weird sour grapes. Like, who is this? Who's this street rat you're bringing into my basement lab? Don't touch anything kind of a deal.
Right.
Yeah. But so, yeah, the story, which we should probably talk about, is these three kids. They start, one of them, Ethan Hawke's character, Ben, starts having these bizarre dreams where he's flying through these clouds and then he's over a Tron-like circuit board. It's like a cross between 2001 and Tron, these weird digital landscapes. And he wakes up and he starts drawing everything that he sees. And he takes that to his friend Wolfgang, played by River Phoenix, who's a science nerd, as we've mentioned. And he's like, oh, yeah, there's a circuit board. I think I can build this for you. So he does. And it turns out he builds this device that creates a spherical, semi-visible force field that is impermeable. It's super fast. It's hard to control, but you can actually breathe inside of it. So along with this kid, Darren, who sort of saves Ben from some bullies at school, they form this unlikely trio who discover that, hey, not only did this dreamlike message tell us how to build this orb, but it's also kind of telling us you should go further and build a spaceship, and then maybe you can come visit us. And so they do. And that's Explorers. That's basically the movie. It's not, there's no intrigue involving like the Russians or something like that, like they would have had in the mid 80s. It's a very simple story. And I think almost to a fault.
Yeah. I mean, there's some, I would say you could even say maybe some cliche 80s coming of age side plots or subplots of, Ben, who's kind of the heart of the story, played by Ethan Hawke. Kind of has a thing for the local girl who's, kind of very nice to him. And that's, something we've seen a lot of.
Did you recognize that actress?
I did not. No, I didn't.
Did you ever see Can't Buy Me Love, the Patrick Dempsey movie from 1987?
Only parts.
We don't have to go any further.
Okay. Right.
But no, she was in that. She was the main actress. She was Patrick Dempsey's the crush in that movie.
Okay.
So it was nice to see her.
She almost reminded me a little bit of young Elizabeth Shue. But yeah, and the other subplot is something we've seen a lot in movies of, how Darren doesn't really want to go home, and he's kind of, anxious about, he lives with his dad and his dad's girlfriend, we take it. And, that one scene, which was really kind of poignant, the way Jason Presson handles it, is, he bikes up to his home and hears arguing, and he's like, "Oh, I guess my dad didn't get that job. And yeah, maybe I won't go home right now." And I think, I don't know, that it's not, when I call them subplots, I think it's more kind of like added seasoning to these characters, really. They're not explored, and they don't have to, because they have their own exploring to do. But I like that and I always cringe when I see bullying in teen movies, just because it's so overdone. But even the way that's handled is I think enough. And I think that there's a reason for it. It's introducing, like you said, Darren. So I think, there are certain cliches in this movie that are handled just the right amount of, like I said, seasoning for these characters to bring them all together. And but I did really like that, and I haven't seen Jason Presson in a whole lot. He didn't do a whole lot after probably about 97. But I thought he was a really good actor. And I like the way he handled some of those kind of like tender kind of scenes. There's a lot going on internally.
I think that's a credit to the screenwriter, Eric Luke. There is a great line. I think it's right after they decide not to go to Darren's house, and they're kind of taking a path through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben is kind of probing Darren about his dad. And I think he said something like, "He's not so bad. He taught me how to run. He can't catch me anymore." And it just goes by really quickly. It's like, oh, that's a really kind of a kid way to talk about some real dark stuff that's going on in his life.
Yeah. And, I like that because, there's a little bit of that too in Stand By Me, where you get this idea that like, there's some heavy stuff going on with these kids, but what we're really focusing on is the escapism that, they immerse themselves in order to get away from that. And I think that's a very relatable thing to a lot of kids who grew up then. And I say that unfortunately, because most of the escapism for kids nowadays is just, right in front of them on their screen, on their phone. So to actually, say, hey, let's meet at the fort after school or something, or hey, let's continue building the spaceship. Hey, we got that montage to do of building the spaceship after school. That's something special. Speaking of montage, I really did like that building the spaceship montage, and how, then going back to school, they're like falling asleep or really tired, It's funny.
Yeah. And that really is something, the kids movies in the 80s, they really were centered around these kind of found families, which is a motif that you've seen, the last 30 years in movies and television, but found families that are really doing stuff like building things or going on adventures together. A lot of movies nowadays, it's like if you see these kids at home, they're just at home, they're in their room, they're not doing anything. Like nobody's building anything anymore.
Like as if they're in a pandemic. Yeah. But yeah.
I can only imagine what those movies are going to be like. Oh my God. But no, speaking of Stand By Me, it's, I don't have the actor's name, but one of the bullies is the actor who played River Phoenix. One of the bullies who was bullying River Phoenix played River Phoenix's bully brother in Stand By Me, the kid who played Eyeball Chambers.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is, it's
crazy.
Weird to think about these movies came out like a year apart because the kids look so different. I mean, that must have been the year they hit puberty. In fact, I think there's a scene later in this film where River Phoenix looks significantly older. Maybe it's just because he doesn't have the glasses and his hair isn't as in his face. It's when he's on the spaceship. But I'm like, oh, he aged like 6 months in the course of this shoot.
It is weird what a wardrobe, a hairstyle, and a pair of geeky glasses will do for you. throughout most of this movie, and I'm pretty sure this is taking place in California, and in the fall, and I lived in California in the fall, but I grew up in Illinois. But it's so funny to see a kid wearing, kind of a sport jacket, a sweater, most of the time a shirt and a tie under the sweater. It's like, where's this kid living? Minnesota?
Well, no, I think I saw something, and it may have been filmed in California, but I think I saw there's some detail suggesting it takes place in Maryland, of all places.
Oh, interesting. I didn't notice that. Yeah. But yeah, it is filmed in, I think, Petaluma. I think where American Graffiti was filmed. But I did, look, taking it out of context, if you watch this movie now and you're a stickler for cheesy special effects and they take you out of a movie, don't go there with this movie, because I think that's the charm of this, is that, like you said, there is that kind of, Tron-esque, dream sequence, but there's also, like, even when they start toying with the sphere, and of course, a lot of that is also credit to Jerry Goldsmith's great score, but, when they start playing around with the sphere, when it goes really small and it's bouncing all around the basement, Wolfgang's basement science lab, it's yes, it's dated, but for its time, it's just like, it's great. It's charming.
Well, it is one of those things that, yeah, you can tell that modern special effects, all the digital wizardry would make it look smoother, but watching something that I know is dated, I cue into something different, especially in the case of Explorers, which is how the physical actors and the physical environments were dealing with this effect that would be put in later. Like when the kids are looking at the sphere, they're all looking in the same place. They're all reacting to it as if it's in the same place doing these things. The basement, because they didn't have digital effects back then the way that we know them now, they're actually having to blow stuff up and blast holes through things. I mean, it reminded me of another 1985 film, Real Genius, had a laser that went through the lab and all across campus. It's very much the same kind of effect. So
see, that's what I was busy watching.
Yeah, me too. I was a big fan, but it was it's kind of a different kind of a special effect, because you realize a whole lot of people had to put a whole lot more work into it, instead of, sorry for my digital effects friends out there, just a few people like sitting and programming images on a computer.
Speaking of programming images on a computer, I got a kick out of how they had to lug around the was it an old Apple or something. But I'm thinking, I'm like, how is this working when they're like going outside on that hill by the tree? How is this? There's no connection to anything. I mean, what's going on here?
Well, the answer is in a scene, because I think it might have been that hilltop scene, because they're talking about the amount of power that they can use to generate the sphere. Is like, if we had a bigger power source, we could really make this thing go far. It's like, how big a power source we have now, and Wolfgang pops a little battery 9-volt out of the front of this monitor. And I'm like, I don't know anything about science or computers, obviously. So can a 9-volt power that, even a computer?
That was a little suspect.
Yeah. But I was there with you. I was looking for the extension cord.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, what's going on here? what's the bandwidth? What's the Wi-Fi? Yeah. And even on that hill there is when they start expanding the sphere, and it encompasses Wolfgang's entire body, and they're afraid that he might not be breathing. What's going on? How do I work this? Poor little Ben. And the actors just sell it, man. Young Ethan Hawke was just like, you could tell how frantic he is about trying to save his pal who's in this bubble. It was great. And in the behind the scenes feature, Joe Dante talks about how the film was just totally blasted by critics, except maybe Variety, and nobody really understood it until it came into VHS. And he said that the one complaint was that the first half was very Spielbergian and the rest was Joe Dante. And he's like, I agree, and I have no complaints about that. It's like no arguments here. And it is funny how it does feel that way. And I think that a lot of that comes into play with Joe Dante's, and of course, this has to do a lot with, like you said, the screenwriter Eric Luke. But it does feel very Joe Dante towards the second half, where the kids are up in the air after they've made their tilt-a-whirl spaceship, Thunder Road, and they're kind of going all over the valley. And when it goes past that drive-in, playing an old, I think it's This Island Earth. I could be wrong.
Well,
or Star Killer.
It was called Star Killer, yeah, and
with Robert Picardo.
Yeah, the great Robert Picardo. Help me out here, because this is something that has bugged me for decades. And I was watching this with my wife last night too, because I don't think she'd ever watched it or hadn't watched it all the way through. She was one when it came out. But in that drive-in sequence, it's supposed to be a cheesy 1950s movie with at one point there's an explosion, and Robert Picardo, actually his character, sneakily takes a prop that wasn't supposed to have fallen down, like this giant cone. He stands it up. But the spaceship crashes through the concession stand of the movie theater, and on the screen it cuts back to Robert Picardo's Star Killer character and his girlfriend, like looking up at the camera like, what the hell is going on? As if the spaceship in the real world had interrupted the movie that was going on. I don't know if that was an editing flourish or just like Joe Dante winking at the camera or what. I'm sure they can.
The actors on a screen are reacting what's happening in real life. And yeah, it's pretty funny. There's just some good comedy in there that is, I think, specific to Dante's films. He definitely has a strong nostalgia for genre films. And of course, he came up in the Roger Corman, school of filmmaking. And I think, I was watching this and I think, man, how lucky were these young actors to be directed by this guy and just be on the set and just be, they were talking in the making of about how it was like, being in a fun school kind of thing, where it's like, he would show them Hitchcock movies, or he would just point out all these things and, not necessarily treat them like kids, but just, show them and share with them his love for the business. And I think Hawke at one point in the making of, he was talking about how, I learned a lot. My first two major movies were directed by Joe Dante and Peter Weir, Dead Poets Society. It's like, I learned a lot from these guys, and they're two totally different directors. And that's really cool. Of course, ironically, River Phoenix would go on to be directed by Peter Weir, The Mosquito Coast. But he does. You saw the making of, right?
No, I only caught the first 8 minutes of it.
Okay. Yeah. I watched it this afternoon, and Ethan Hawke says he went and auditioned for this movie called The Body. And he's like, Rob Reiner was just like, oh, you're a great kid, but we just cast, what's this guy for this role? We just cast this kid. He's got a funny name. What is it? Street? And he's like, River Phoenix. And he's like, that was a blow to my ego, but it's just funny to see like how he was talking about how even for Explorers, like, both Corey's auditioned for Explorers, Peter Billingsley. And it's just funny to see, him kind of recounting that and remembering, like, with his nostalgia, all these actors that we know were at the time, you just auditioned for whatever's coming,
It's weird, because if you're saying that Rob Reiner was saying, yeah, we just cast this other kid, River Phoenix, does that suggest that Ethan Hawke was in line for the Chris Chambers role?
Yeah. Would have been interesting.
I can't picture that. I mean, I know Ethan Hawke has a dark side, but I just can't imagine that kid, especially going from Explorers to going to that part a year later.
It's a big stretch.
That would have been like really jarring.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously Stand By Me is excellently cast. And yeah, I think Phoenix definitely brings this haunted, background to Chris Chambers. Yeah, and considering, I think there's let's see, 85, and then his Hawke's next kind of major role was in 89's Dead Poets, and there's a huge significant growth, obviously, biographically or biologically, but maybe biographically too. But and so I think, whereas Phoenix just kept on making movies like back to back, thankfully, because his life was so short, unfortunately. But yeah, it is kind of cool to see how, when this movie is brought up, how much I feel that a lot of people have a great, this movie has a soft spot for a lot of people, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird because this movie was on TV a lot when I was, a kid. I was about 8 years old, I think, when this came out. And I remember I think I'd seen the whole thing in pieces several times over the years. It was like I was a latchkey kid and it was always on HBO or whatever. But I always tuned out around after the Spielberg section, getting into the Joe Dante part. And I watched this last night for the first time in probably 30 years. And the last 20 minutes I had to get up and rewatch this morning because I could not, that whole spaceship scene was a struggle for me, man. And I got up and I rewatched the last 20 minutes because I went to bed feeling this movie isn't as good as I remember. But it still felt wrong to cast that aside. And so watching it this morning with a bit of coffee and, a night's sleep, it is better than I gave it credit for last night, but it is still two different movies. It's goes from Steven Spielberg to slow cinema. It is very Joe Dante in terms of its color palette, in terms of it's got wacky creatures like you saw in this Twilight Zone, the movie, and certainly Gremlins. In fact, the female alien, the sister alien, has the same green flop of hair that we would see in Gremlins 2, the new batch on the female gremlin. So his stamp is all over it.
And Dick Miller.
Yeah. And Dick Miller, yes. But that that last 40 minutes honestly could have been condensed down to 15 minutes just in terms of what actually happens. It's a lot of them walking around this spaceship, who's home, what's in here. There's a giant mechanical spider, which made me think that John Peters was involved somehow. There's the little eyeball that comes out and probes the
Return
kids.
of the
Jedi, yeah. So, and then all of a sudden Wolfgang is hanging out with this alien talking. It just seemed like things happened much more, appears to have happened off screen than what we see on screen as they're cutting back and forth. And while I appreciate that, it's just, I like the idea of, yes, we're going to make contact with alien life, but we're just going to run into some teenagers in their dad's stolen spaceship car, and then we're going to go home because life out there can be just as boring as life down on Earth. That's a cool statement. It's not as cool necessarily to sit through.
Yeah, I mean, I'll disagree with you a little bit on that, just because I remember seeing the aliens as a kid might have been one of the reasons why I'm like, oh, this looks lame. And watching them now, I was like, this is kind of ballsy. Just because the way the alien characters are designed and the color schemes and the way things were shot. And it's just there's a lot of, I think, maybe some subverting of expectations, maybe, because, and I think that's how it is a lot of for how, especially for Ben in the movie, is gosh, his hopes and dreams are kind of shattered because he realizes he just winds up hanging out with, kids, alien kids, probably his age, and who are all, geeked out on American pop culture, because they've just been watching and listening to music and American music and watching American TV and movies, and that's how they know society and that's how they know Earth. And I think, watching this and then watching the making of, there's a point, I'll probably get this wrong or paraphrase poorly, but Ethan Hawke makes a really interesting statement about the movie towards the end of the making of. And I think maybe he arrived on this in hindsight. But he's basically saying that, like, a lot of what this movie's getting at is enjoying the now. Mm-hmm. And how sometimes your expectations or your dreams, they don't live up to how you hope for them to be, because he's up on his roof, Spielbergian gazing up at the stars, and then Joe Dante throws them up into space, and he meets these kind of garish, bumbling, teenage aliens. And what? Come on, are you kidding me? This is what it's all about. And even in their spaceship, Ben is just kind of like, what is going on here? I mean, the first line that the character Whack communicates to him is, "Yeah, what's up, Doc?" And Ethan Hawke's just like, what? And I really like that idea of, like, hey, maybe we're not all as unique as we hope we are. And there's nothing wrong with that.
That is an interesting message. And I think another, theme of this film, although it's certainly not stated, is that on your way to your dreams, you're going to have experiences that, even if your dreams are, the goal does not live up to your fantasy of what it would be, you still have a hell of an experience. Because I think if you told Ben, I've got a psychic crystal ball, you're going to go to space one day and discover a bunch of lame teenagers or, aliens, and it's not going to be anything like you've got in mind, I think he still would have wanted to go on the journey of making those friends, building that spaceship. I think that's one of the reasons I like the first part of this movie so much, is because they're actually doing something and building something and being creative. They get to the spaceship and they're just kind of walking around and experiencing stuff that we don't really have any context for, like, my God, I just lost his name. The name of the tough kid. Darren.
Darren. Yeah.
He gets hooked up to this weird psychic thing that's kind of reading his brain and tapping into Ben's dreams. I'm like, Joe Dante mentioned that this is a compromised version of the film that he wanted to make. Yeah. And for years he'd been searching for these deleted scenes, because I guess there was sort of a work print, almost a Snyder cut version of this. And he found it in his garage. That's why, I guess that's what we're looking at on the Shout Factory thing. And I didn't watch all the deleted scenes, but
there's a lot.
Right. And the cool thing is, I watched the first bit of it, and you can watch it with Dante's commentary.
Right.
And he's like in awe. He's like, I can't believe I finally get to sit here and share this with you and talk about it.
That's cool.
He's got that infectious, filmmaker thing. There's got to be a movie someday before they both die. I would love to see him and Martin Scorsese play brothers in a movie.
And maybe Ethan Hawke could star in that one too.
There you go. My two granddads. No, I love Joe Dante. I love his work. This is the only one that I can think of really where, just personally, and maybe it's because I think the promise of what this movie could have been is sort of in the implied sequel, because at the end, when they're all flying together over a new keyboard or circuit board, they're kind of talking about, I don't know what this means, but it must mean that they're up to something even bigger. So it kind of implies that maybe they're going to get the signal to build the ship again, because Thunder Road sinks, because there's something else, calling to them.
Yeah.
But the thing is, even after that disappointment, they still have that childlike enthusiasm to say, okay, let's try it again. Maybe the first time was just kind of lame, but there could be something even more out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm so glad there wasn't a sequel or remake.
Right.
Yeah. Some of those flying scenes were probably the only scenes that I was like, I don't know if this kind of thing works, because it almost was like,
can you read my mind?
Yeah, exactly. It was like, it had this Superman and Lois quality. It was just like, and honestly, the only thing in the screenplay that really kind of made me scratch my head and kind of, miff me up a little bit was the whole dream stuff was a little weird. Like, okay, great. He's getting visions of, circuitry or whatever, but how is that connected to the aliens? Are they communicating to him somehow? Or if so, how, why? I mean, because Ben's not the geeky nerd, Wolfgang is. So, I don't know.
Well, but they do at some point get the ability to draw. It's Ben draws the others into his dream.
That's what was weird too. It's like, how's that working?
It's murky, but I mean, it's the same kind of logic that we have in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where you've got Richard Dreyfuss saying, this means something as he's scooping, potatoes onto his plate. It is murky and it is kind of vague, but I think that's okay because this isn't the kind of movie that is meant to explore that. Because if you stop and think about it, like, really, when we meet the aliens, are these teenagers really rigging whatever psychic technology juice to find out these kids on Earth and pull them up to the stars? Like, no,
yeah, there's no way. I did like that line where, like, when the father comes home and they have to, like, you guys better go now. Where he's like, man, we didn't even get to tell you the secrets of the universe.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a great line.
But they did give him a little dream amulet.
Right.
Allowed them to,
do whatever. Yeah.
Bring the dream girl, Lori, into their little trio, make that a quartet.
Yeah. I don't know. Once you bring a girl into a tight knit, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, they just need a couple more and they can go fight Pennywise the clown.
There you go.
No, I mean, the thing is, I love part of Explorers. I wish I loved all of it. Maybe I just need to go back and revisit it in a year or two instead of having another 3-decade gap between, because it had been so long and I watched it when I was, it was very late. I love the heart of this movie. I love so much about it. It's just the actual process of watching it as it did when I was a kid. It just kind of loses me after a while.
I'd be interested in hearing what you think about it once you've watched all the special features. I mean, there is a plethora of deleted scenes. I couldn't get through them all because I wanted to watch everything else before I talk to you. There's a great little interview with cinematographer John Hora, who died this year at age 80. Yeah, February 9th at age 80. And he is the predominant cinematographer for all of Joe Dante's movies. So he's always worked with Joe, and he's always worked with Dick Miller. And it was just a sweet little, interview. It's short, but then Dick Miller pops in on his couch, like literally. And this is obviously before Dick died. I think it looks like what it's saying, it was like an excerpt from, what was the documentary about Dick Miller? Dick Miller guy? That guy, Dick Miller. Yeah. So I think it was an excerpt from that. But there's also a little interview with the editor, Tina Hirsch, who also edited Gremlins and a bunch of other stuff. But it's cool to see them have their own nostalgia for it. And, I think it's the making of is wonderfully edited too. And I wish, I wish that the only out of the three of them, obviously, as far as I know, only two are alive. But it would have been nice to have the kid who played Darren, Jason Presson, on. But it was also very interesting to see author Ernest Cline, who wrote.
He's a super fan, yeah.
Yeah, he's a super fan. It's funny because he did what I did when I went to LA and when I went to Astoria, is I sought out certain addresses of movie locations and took my pictures of them. So he was in those areas and he took a picture outside the house. He went up to the hill and the tree and took a picture there. So it was cool to see that, like, oh, Ernest Cline's just like us. But Yeah, it's sad that this movie just kind of got lost in '85, but it rediscovered on VHS and everything. But I think that most people, I'm sure somebody like Patrick Bromley, loves this movie because he's such a Joe Dante fan too. But I think they're in the making of. They were also saying that when this came out, Live Aid was also on TV, so nobody went to the movies.
It had an uphill battle. Now I'm thinking it's 2021 now. In like 4 years, it's gonna be the 40th anniversary of this movie.
Oh wow!
It'd be really cool if, and now we just got this special edition thing, and hopefully Joe Dante is still around, making movies. But it'd be cool if he was able to go back and deliver the director's cut of Explorers, like incorporating all that footage. I don't know if this came out in the documentary, but it sounds like he's got the stuff, like the deleted scenes. I don't know that he'd have to like film anything. Maybe
I don't know how
effects shots.
I don't know how polished it is. I mean, they'd really have to do some work on it. And plus the original cut was like over 3 hours. So,
which I mean, as much as I said that the alien stuff bothered me, if it's 2 extra hours of the alien stuff, as long as it's not just walking around the spaceship and we get like more kind of what's going on here, that could be fun.
Yeah, I really don't think it is. I think it's a lot more to do with some school stuff, some more Dick Miller stuff, some more Ben at home with his parents, because we didn't see his dad in this cut, right? Mm-hmm. But in the deleted scene, his dad's there, and was his mom's.
Was his dad played by anybody? Like,
not that I recognized. I know that, James Cromwell plays Wolfgang's dad, and Mary Kate Place plays Ben's mom, uncredited. Speaking of Wolfgang Peterson was originally supposed to make this movie.
Oh,
and they watched the producers watched Neverending Story, and they're like, yeah, that's got a very European feel to it. We need somebody who gets the American idiom more, and that's why. And even Wolfgang backed out graciously. He's like, that's okay. It's okay. But they found the right guy with Joe Dante. And I love how he even looks back on this as, a very, kind of soft spot in his heart for it too. So,
one last note on the casting, Dick Miller's co-pilot in the helicopter was Misak Taylor, who would show up in 1986's Mannequin as Hollywood Montrose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Small world, that Hollywood.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Mannequin going way back, and so I had forgotten that he was in this movie. I'm like, oh my god, that's me.
Isn't it? There's also Mannequin 2 on the move, right? Or no?
We don't talk about that.
Okay, all right, sure. All right, okay.
Even though that's celebrating, quote unquote, celebrating 30 years this year, unbelievably. Yeah. So I think that's Explorers. We have explored Explorers pretty well. So yeah, thanks for. I mean, even though this was not like a crazy, like close to the heart nostalgia bomb, I am glad that we got to talk to it and get your perspective as a relative newcomer to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I felt like I was rediscovering it and just getting a taste of the extras on this disc. I feel like that's gonna make up for the kind of disappointment I had at the end of the actual movie itself.
Right, and I'm interested. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Shot Factory on this release has the theatrical cut and home video,
and the home video, which I was doing some reading on Wikipedia about it, because it's a few minutes shorter than the theatrical cut, because there's 2 scenes that are taken out, but there are also a few scenes that are added back in. So I guess that fidgeting led to a shorter runtime, but there's actually different, like more material.
Interesting.
In the home video cut. I didn't have time to go back and watch it, but I will at some point, I'm sure.
All right.
Yeah, but all right, David Fowley of Keeping It Real. I keep forgetting to introduce people at the beginning of these shows, so hopefully they stay to the end, or at least read the credit down on the screen.
Right.
But yeah, thank you very much, sir. It's been fun, and our next conversation will be a lot quieter.
Oh my gosh.
Until then, sir, take care and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.